welcome back to Brick Gaming YuGiOh. Today I'm going to teach you guys some really cool stuff about Yu-Gi-Oh interactions, about how to play better the game in a way of technical play, and then I'm going to talk about the damage step. So this should be really fun. But before I get into that, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot if you guys do that. And if you aren't subscribed, you should definitely subscribe. I've been doing tons of content, been doing really cool stuff that will help out pretty much all Yu-Gi-Oh players. Plus there's like deck profiles, all that type of fun stuff. So it should be really exciting to see where the channel goes next. Also, I'm getting close to 100 subs, so I'm planning on hopefully doing a 100 subs special, so please definitely drop a sub, and then I'll start going over details, and probably when we get closer to that date, when I get closer to 100 subs. So let's get into this. So first off, I really just want to talk about interactions. I want to talk about the damage step first, and this also all ties in with technical play. So I kind of want to first off go over something that a lot of people know, or maybe don't know. But, I hope people know. So if you have Pot of Extravagance on your side of the field, and you activate at the start of your main phase, and your opponent ashes it, all of Pot of Extravagance's effects are negated, so you can still draw cards after that. So in case you're playing other draw cards in your deck, you can still play those draw cards if it's ashed, since the effects were negated. And it works the same way if its activation is negated, like let's say with a Solemn Judgment or a Dark Bribe. You still have Banished as cost, though. That will always be something you have to do, which is mandatory. But if your opponent does hit the card, you can still draw. Also, another cool interaction is that if you have Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Duality, you can play both in the same turn, because Pot of Extravagance doesn't say you can't, well, here, let me just break it down a little bit more technical terms. Pot of Duality is technically a search card, and you what's the technical word I could use for this? Basically, it's revealing to add instead of draw. So it's adding a card. That's actually in the card text itself. So Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Duality can be played in the same turn. And that's kind of some cool interactions. Next, I want to talk about having anti-spell up on the field and having either a Demise of the Land or a Metaverse. So if anti-spell is up on the field, and you have one of these cards in face down back, where obviously you can't use Demise of the Land if it was your turn you set, and then you go to your opponent, they have anti-spell. You can't use it until your next turn. But can you activate a field spell from deck under anti-spell? The answer is no. But so that makes it so that Demise of the Land can't resolve, since you can only activate to your side of the field. But since anti-spell is on the field, you cannot do that. But with Metaverse, you can still add the field spell to your hand, and then you can set it to your side of the field. So that's kind of an interesting interaction. Probably doesn't come up for a lot of people very often, but in case it ever does, that is a small interaction. Next, I want to talk about, let's see, which should we talk about next? Oh yeah, Ghost Ogre and field spells / continuous spells. So your opponent has a set field spell on their side of the field, and you have Ghost Ogre in your hand, and they activate that field spell. You can't Ghost Ogre the initial activation. But if they do proceed to use the effect of the field spell after flipping it up, or sometime during their turn, at that point you can Ghost Ogre. Also, another cool interaction with Hidden City, if your opponent flips up, the card effect will activate upon activation if they choose to use it, and at that point you can Ghost Ogre that effect. But if they just activate it from hand, you can't hit on the initial activation, since Ghost Ogre has a check that's already on the field and activating. So that's a pretty cool interaction, something kind of important to know. Ghost Ogre is also really good right now because of Numerons, but that's kind of besides the point. And that's another really cool interaction you should know in Yu-Gi-Oh! Next is access code. Now, everyone should know what access code does, and it's been out for a while now, but access code is really good because your opponent can't respond to its effects. But some people somehow try to get away with doing this play. So you can't respond to its effects activating, so they'll summon him out and attempt to use his effect as soon as he hits the board. Now, if you have a counter trap face down that could prevent the summon, you still have time to respond, since it hits the board and then activates the effect, so it gives you a window to respond to the summon of the card itself. Now, some players will ignore that or say, well, you can't respond to the summon because they used his effect on summon. That is completely incorrect. Your opponent doesn't have priority, but they do have time to respond with a card like Solemn Strike on the summon, which will prevent the summon and make it so the card never hits the field. Thus, they cannot use access code to gain attack. And never fall into that loophole. It's like, if you summon out access code and your opponent has a negate, they can still negate the summon. It's not like, oh, access code's invincible. No, it's not. So that's just another little interaction that I think should be very important, especially with hopefully YCSs and originals starting up hopefully soon. Next is a cool interaction with Rivalry. So let's say you're going up against a really bad deck called Simorgh, and your opponent has a Dark Simorgh on field. And let's say that's their only monster. Oh wait, no, this actually is a Gozen match rule. My bad. Well, let's say Gozen match. We'll present that this is a Gozen match. Let's say you have Gozen match up on your field, and you activate Gozen match on your opponent's turn after you summon one monster, which happens to be Dark Simorgh. Well, at that point, they need to choose one of the two attributes of the monster. So if they choose Dark Simorgh still dies because it's both a Dark and a Wind. Thus, it's two different attributes. And either way, no matter what attribute you choose, it will always hit Grave. Because it always is both those attributes. You just can't choose one and take the other. Also, cool interaction with Rivalry is obviously Zombie World interaction, where if every monster's the same type, Rivalry does nothing at all, but would prevent player from summoning from hand unless they're summoning a zombie from hand. So that's a cool interaction. And just some other minor stuff like that. Next is the most confusing card of all time, Inspector Border. And I know it's super confusing, it's super weird, but I'm going to help you all out understanding Inspector Border better. So Inspector Border doesn't check for monsters that have already been on the field. Inspector Border only checks for monsters currently on the field. And here's a really confusing part. If you already activate a monster effect, and let's say you had a Link on field, and that Link left the field, and then you summon out another Link, you don't get another monster effect. But if you summon out a Fusion, then you can get another monster effect. And if you have both of these on the field, you'll have two monster effects in that turn. But if both of them were to hit Grave, you would go from 2 monster effects down to 0 monster effects. You will have no more monster effects unless you summon down another Link, another Fusion. Even if you didn't use any effects while they were on the field, even if you didn't use any of them, Inspector Border only checks the field. Thus, if your opponent activates a card that would get rid of them, or a card that would send like a Link or a Fusion or a Synchro SOZ, whatever, to the graveyard, it means that you're back walked out of monster effects again. So I think that's a really cool interaction. A lot of people don't know that because they'll think, okay, I summoned out Link this turn, I didn't use the effect, my opponent got rid of that Link. Now I'm going to normal summon a monster from my hand and attempt that effect. You can't do that. You can still normal summon that monster if you haven't normal summoned, of course, but you can't attempt the effect since you don't currently control a monster that's either a Link, Fusion, XYZ, etc. And because Inspector Border doesn't check Grave, it doesn't check what's previously been on the field, and its effect only lingers to the point of what is currently on the field. So that's just a little tiny helpful tip / something that you should be aware of. And I notice a lot of people getting really confused over his effect, but that's as simplified as I think it can get with his very confusing effect. Oh, and also one more really fun thing you can do with Inspector Border is if you have a monster on field and you have Inspector Border in hand, you can set Inspector Border. Then during your next turn, if your opponent doesn't get rid of your set Inspector Border, you can flip it face up, and it doesn't count it doesn't count as the normal summoning or special summoning it. It counts as a flip summon, which also gets around having another monster on field and not being able to summon Inspector Border. I actually didn't know that, and I had to get a ruling on this on Dueling Book, and turns out you can do that, which is super cool. So if you play Inspector Border in like your True Draco deck or your Stun deck, that's something to know. Or if your opponent plays it, that's also something to know. Hopefully that helps out with that. And now everyone's favorite part of the game, the best part of Yu-Gi-Oh, the part of Yu-Gi-Oh that everyone loves, the damage step. Okay, so if you're in the damage step, there's very little you can do per se. So first off, if you're in the damage step, for activating effects, you can't activate effects that basically negate the effects. It has to be cards that negate the activation, and usually those are traps. So like, let's say you're in the damage step, right, and you have an infinite impermanence. Your opponent has infinite impermanence in their column, and you have a lost win in the same column. And let's say they have a monster face up that's trying to attack, or like they have a special. One second, I'm gonna get this set up a little bit better. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna get a good example for this. Let's say you have this, and your opponent has this. 1 second, I'm running out of room. But they have these 2 cards on their field, and your opponent has these 2 cards. Okay, let's say they go battle phase, and in damage step, you activate Lost Wind on them, and the Lost Wind and the Impermanence are in the same column. And your opponent attempts to respond with Impermanence. They cannot respond with Impermanence in the damage step, because Impermanence only negates effects. It does not negate activations, which means that you cannot activate Impermanence, but you could activate Lost Wind, you could activate Solemn Strike, stuff like that, but you can't activate any other cards unless it specifically activates in damage step, like specifically on the cards that activates in damage step, or a card that, for example, like let's say a card that's lingering like Inspector Border. Inspector Border's effects are still alive in the battle phase and it's still live in the damage step, but any other monsters activate effects, like let's say a True Draco monster or Borreload in the damage step, their effects will not be activatable since they don't negate an activation. They only interact with other card effects, thus they cannot activate. So that's just a little tip for the damage step, because everyone loves the damage step, and it definitely doesn't confuse anyone on what you can and can't do in the damage step. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please drop a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be uploading more content pretty soon, so definitely stick around, and we'll see you all in the next video.